I, okay, let me make sure. Okay, it's working.
While he's getting that
Okay,
started,
it's working, yes. And
I am going to try to answer Zoom chat questions while Dr. Stedman is talking, and vice versa. When he starts talking, or I start talking, he'll do the same. But if we could do like we did on Thursday and just ask the question to everyone.
yeah, and if there is something that you need privately of us, if you would hold off on that and communicate with us via email or call us as you need to after the session tonight. It makes it so much easier. And I would encourage you too to first of all, welcome to our Tuesday evening Zoom class. This is the second week of 16 weeks, guys. It will go by quickly, faster than you realize. Before you know it, we will be halfway there, and then all of a sudden it'll be the end. But welcome, and thank you for still being with us. Not everybody's with us, but you have chosen not to give up, and people have to give up sometimes for various reasons, and sometimes they're very legitimate. But we thank you for still being here with us on week 2. We hope that what we have outlined for you this evening is going to help with some of the butterflies that some of you still have, some of the question marks that still float around in your head. We hope that we're going to be able to alleviate a lot of that this evening. What I want you to look at is on the screen as a reminder. We are in week 2, and for week 2, a lot of this information under the topics we have covered. We put it there, but it doesn't mean that we'll always get to every bit of it. It may come to you in a different way. We've covered some of that already. We will cover some of it again on Thursday night with Dr. Lamb. But we will be looking at, I will go over the peer reviewing process again with you this evening, because you will have to start that very soon. I will go back and show you again what you need to know at this point in Blackboard concerning discussion board. Task stream, we're not ready for that yet. That will mainly be, Dr. Lamb will let us know when that is ready, so don't even worry about task stream yet. The workshop on APA, don't worry about Turnitin yet. Remember, he said do not touch it, so do not touch Turnitin. We'll let you know when it's ready. The APA is going to be a big thing, and there are 2 sessions that Gardner Webb is sponsoring with some workshops, Zoom workshops on APA, the new APA in the 7th edition. And one of them is the 23rd, that is this week. What is that? Thursday. It's at 6 o'clock before our meeting at 7 o'clock. So it probably will last about 30. I would encourage you to take the time, just block out that time and join them. They will cover some things. If it's the same person that presented to us at our faculty retreat, Dr. Revis, she did an excellent job, and she works in the media center at Gardner Webb University. So I would encourage you to take advantage of this. And if for some reason you can't, then there is another session, and I think it's next week, and it'll be under week 3 where you can get that. But I plan to try to join them again so I can hear whatever I can't remember, so it'll help me with this new stuff. Ubben chapter 3 and the principal book. If we have time at the end of the session today, we're going to talk about some of the key points in that. I know some of you are still waiting for your books to arrive. I would encourage you to go back and do your readings, even when they come in, the past readings for the weeks that we would have already gone by, because all of the readings, you will see how it relates to the work that you're doing or the work that you will be doing. So please take advantage of that. We will we will be talking this evening about the APSL Task 1 and the APSL. I will introduce you pretty solidly into the APSL Task 2. And the reason being, from this point on, we will always will be reviewing and bringing closure to a task and always introducing another task at the same time. So that will be consistent from this point on until almost the end of the semester. So you'll always have, it's like juggling the balls. You'll have two things going on, at one time. But you'll see how they all work hand in glove anyway. This evening also, we're going to, Dr. Revis in just a few minutes is going to share with you a topic on the PLC, and I looked at it, Dr. Revis. I think this is going to solidify some things with them. I really like what you're going to present. And then, like I said, I'm going to go into the template, and then I'm going to go into the APSL helpful hints. I'll pull those documents up, and I'm going to go through it step by step so that we can try to make it as clear as we possibly can. But I think once Dr. Revis presents what she's going to present, I think that that's going to help put some of the puzzle pieces together as well. So Dr. Revis, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to you at this time.
Okay. Can you see my screen, Dr. Stedman?
I cannot. I just see our. Okay, you got the okay, you got to hit share at the bottom. Can you see it?
No, I do not.
Okay, let me do this.
Can you pull it up?
Yeah, let me do this, and that way it'll save us some time. Okay. And while I'm up, these are under week 2. Everything that we're presenting, you have access to that even after the class tonight. You can always go back and you can revisit it. We have this is based on the Ubben reading. This is from Dr. Stone from last semester, but it was archived. It was good enough that we kept that so that you have that as a resource. And then if I have time, then I'm going to share something from here. These are just some pointers from the book, but I'm going to pull this up for Dr. Revis at this time.
I'm going to go ahead and start. When we are talking about PLCs, in my opinion, that's a much overused term to describe about any time educators come together. We call them a PLC. But in fact, that's not a PLC. And for the purposes of our course and what you're going to do in your APSL, we're going to ground our PLC work in DeFore's work. And so if you'll see on slide 2, can you start the slideshow from there, Dr. Stedman? Okay. It may not let you.
Yeah, just tell me when you want next. Just say next, and I'll click on it. Okay.
And so, what we're going to talk about as a PLC and what you should be organizing for your first PLC is a focus on and a commitment to the learning of each student. So, guys, when you bring together or you're sitting in a group of educators and you're talking about attendance being an issue or tardies being an issue, well, those are all valid issues within your school, within the management of your school, but that's really not a professional learning community because it's not focused on student learning for all. So there are 3 big tenets next in our PLC and 3 big ideas. Number 1, focus on learning for all students. Creating and promoting a culture of collaboration, and a focus on results. Now, you've heard Dr. Lamb talk about all these 3 things during his work with you in the past week, but we're going to delve just a little bit deeper into these 3 big ideas. So, next, when we talk about a focus for learning, we ask 3 big questions in our PLC. What do we want students to learn? And of course, that's driven by your curriculum standards. How do we know when they've learned it? And that is the results that we receive from our state assessments or our interim assessments or our NC check-ins. You do know that for this task, you do have to get that state data from last spring as a big piece of it, but you also use your formative assessments and benchmarks along the way, but that's how you know when they've learned it. And then lastly, how will we respond to students when they are experiencing difficulty in their learning? The focus here is shifting away from always remediation to intervention, whereby we try to catch our students up and intervene as quickly as possible as we progress throughout the year. So let's turn to the next slide and look about that culture of collaboration. If you are fortunate enough to work in schools where you have strong collaborative teams, whether they're a true PLC focused on student learning or whether they're collaborative teams discussing and finding solutions to school problems, if your adults in your building are accustomed to collaboration, I think that puts you one step ahead. But here's the key to collaboration. You have to build that trust, that atmosphere of trust. Now, in your APSL, you're bringing together a new group of people. So anytime you do that, you've got to start by building that trust. And one of the things on the next slide that you'll see is building your team norms. And team norms are just how we agree to operate as a PLC and how we're going to make decisions, how we're going to come to a consensus. And if you're not sure what that word consensus means, I would challenge you to look that up. It doesn't mean that everybody gets their way, because that can't happen. How do we agree to disagree professionally? How will we agree to communicate within the PLC and then after it's over? What if we have questions that we want to ask after the PLC meeting adjourns? How do we do that? I would just highly recommend that you try to do either something along the line of a team email that everybody sees the questions that one person asks, or if you may be working on documents, use a Google Doc so that people can work at the same time on a document. But how are we going to agree that we're going to communicate both within the PLC and outside of the PLC? What information is confidential during your PLC, and what information do we want you to share with others? And finally, decide on when we will meet. One good resource on the next slide that we have here, and Dr. Stedman, I don't know if that link is a hot link or not, but this is a PLC guidebook. I don't believe it is.
If they will copy it and put it in their URL, they should be able to open it up that way.
Yes, you should be able to do that. But this is a real good resource book for you as a facilitator. It goes into things like how to set norms, how to facilitate discussions. There is a template for setting norms. And don't forget, those are kinds of things that you can save, or you should be saving, to use as artifacts. There's a template you can use to have someone take minutes. And of course, that's a role that you would want to hopefully assign in your PLC. And those minutes become an artifact for you. There's also an agenda template and so on. This is just a really good resource for you to use as a facilitator. It was published by a school district out of Florida, I believe.
Yeah, that's worth looking at.
It really is. And the next slide, I'll talk just a little bit more about the third big tenet of a TLC, and that is results oriented. I don't know why we educators tend to shy away from feeling comfortable in setting goals, but if you don't set goals, then you really sometimes start floundering as a team. So within your project, your whole big APSL project, you're going to be asked down the road to set some short-term goals and some long-term goals. And that way you can focus on results. If you don't set goals, again, you can get derailed in your discussions, and what the focus is, and you can miss the whole learning for all, and to really know if what you're doing is really making a difference for students. So when we look on the next slide at our cycle, it's a cycle of continuous improvement. We look at our current state of student learning, we develop strategies, we implement strategies, we examine the impact of those strategies, and then we apply new knowledge. So it's a cycle of continuous improvement, and that's what all schools should strive to, and I'm sure many of your schools do something such as this. But I've heard many educators talk about, well, we have PLCs, but we don't really focus on student learning, and we're not really committed to meeting frequently, and we don't really look at our results, and we don't talk about teaching and learning. Guys, one of the things that you want to make sure that is an outgrowth of a PLC is professional learning for teachers. You know, when we really get down to where we're comfortable in that PLC asking these questions, my students didn't do well on this standard, but Dr. Stedman, I saw where your students performed really well. Would you be willing to share some of your teaching strategies with me? What a wonderful, powerful, meaningful in-house professional development that is. And that's how you start to grow as educators, when you start sharing those professional practices.
And they're going to see how all that comes together, what you just said, and evidence too of the APTEL that they'll do after the APSOR.
Right. And one of the things as a principal, one of your big areas that you have to address is you want every classroom to be taught by a highly effective teacher. You don't want just spots of effective teachers throughout your building. You want every teacher to be highly effective. And PLCs, I promise you, is one strong way, one very effective way to raise the level of effective teaching throughout your building. So on the next slide, and this comes from Dr. Stone, I just really loved it, so I brought this in. He talked about last semester about how all teams are potentially dysfunctional, and that's just because we're all humans. So all teams have that potential to be dysfunctional. One potential for dysfunction is lack of norms. In your first meeting, I challenge you, you've got to set norms. But I also say that take the first 90 seconds of subsequent meetings to review those norms. Doesn't take long. And just say to the group, do we all still agree that this is how we want to operate? Are there any new norms that we need to add? Do we need to revise these norms? Do we all agree that this is how we're going to function? Lack of team goals. Again, if you don't set team goals, then you can get derailed in your discussions. Or sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, and you've got to keep that goal in mind as you work through the various discussions. A lack of trust. If you don't trust, then you're not willing to get down to really that key professional learning piece where I'm willing to share my best practices. I'm willing to share the results of my students' unit exam. When we get to the place where teachers are willing to share results of their own students' work, you can say that you have trust. Lack of communication. We've already talked about how we need to build that communication and how we're going to talk within the team and outside of the team, and lack of student learning outcomes. And so the last slide, I just wanted to share with you a focus again on that professional learning for educators and that outgrowth that comes from there. And then the very last slide are some additional web resources that Dr. Stone shared last semester. So I'll leave that with you. One of the things you have to do in your APSL project is you have to do a little mini research piece on professional learning communities. In your APSL materials, you have several DO4 articles, and DO4 must be one of the authors that you do talk about in your lit review. You also have your UBN textbook, and there's a chapter in there on professional learning communities. And then finally, I would suggest you can look at these resources, or go to your Dover Library and put into the search engine professional learning communities, and you get all kinds of great information pulled up there. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, I hope I'm going to do this right. Hold on, guys. Let me see. Now, let me come back with a new share. Okay, that's. Let me come out of this. Okay, here it is. Let me find my materials. Thank you, Dr. Revis. That is going to align with let me see. Here it is. That's what I want. That's what I want right there. Okay. We've gone over this several times already, but again, as a reminder, in Blackboard, it's important that you pay attention to the APSL, where the APSL template and materials are located, because there are 3 documents there that's very, very important. The first one is the APSL template itself that you will use as your model this is where you fill in the blanks with your work, and you follow that model. The second one is what I'm going to go to in just a minute, and that's your APSL helpful hints document, and this basically will guide you through the full development of the APSL. And then the third document is the example, the full example that we've given you of a completed APSL that you can use as a model to go by. Now, what I would like to point out again is it's very, very important that you remember these directions right here. Now, once you submit your work, what I'm circling right here goes away. But this is for your information. Anything you see in yellow, remember, you've got to write something. That's where you're going to do narrative work. It's there on purpose to tell you you've got to do something. If it's red, anything you see in red, those are reminders of things that you can or should be including in that narrative work, things to do. Once you have done it, or once you have used, then that goes away. You delete the red. You write where there's yellow. You use the red as helpful information as much as you need or whatever. Then it goes away. And then if it's in black, all black text stays just like it is. Where you see task 1 description right here, that's going to stay in the work that in your final submitted work. It's going to stay just like it is. But where you see school profile, that means that's a heading, and you're going to do what? You're going to do narrative work under that about your school. So, and that's going to be the process. That's going to be the process throughout. Again, you see this red, that means that's helpful information that you should use in writing the narrative work under PLC research. The same thing with PLC selection and PLC meeting. Now I'm going to come out of this because I want to go to, no, that's not what I want. This is what I want. This was designed last semester, and when it was designed, I simply took the template and all the rubric requirements, and I put it as simply as I could into layman's terms. And I'm not going to, to insult your intelligence, but I think it's important that I read the information as much as possible, and then I stop, to help. Dr. Revis is going to be responding to any questions that you may have, but I think if you'll listen, I think that you'll get it from what I'm saying. Now, at this point, what you should have done, and if you haven't, then you need to make this happen immediately. You should have already had a conversation with your site, with your building principal. That conversation should have been, I am a student at Gardner-Webb University. I have been tasked with the responsibility of forming a PLC, and you need to explain why you have been given that task and what it is that you've got to do, because you've got to have their blessings and you've got to get their permission. Once you have done that face to face, then you should just, as a formality, you need to put it in writing. Just say, I'm going to put this in writing because I've got to have artifacts. I've got to have proof that I have met with you. And I have to have proof that you've said, yes, you have my blessings and you can move forward with the process. So you would send them a text, just say, per our conversation, blah, 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 and what you want them to do. And then they're going to respond back. Those two pieces of that they're going to become communication artifacts is what you're going to have. Then the next thing you're going to do is the title page. Remember, we said that all you're going to do is put your name here. The rest of it stays just like it is. You're going to put your name there, and then you're going to move on. The next task is your school profile. The school profile is simply you're telling the story about your school and the surrounding community. Again, your heading will be school profile followed by the narrative work. And then that leads us into task 1, prompt 1 of the APSL. This is what you should have already begun this and almost through with it, but if not, then I hope we can bring clarity to whatever your questions are tonight. You're going to have a heading, and it's going to say PLC research, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to write underneath that heading, you're going to do PLC research with a minimum of 3 sources. Again, what your research APL style must address: what is a PLC? What does a PLC look like? How is a PLC to be conducted, etc., etc. Dufour spells it out. Dr. Revis shared some of this with you already, but Dufour spells all this out for you, and there are other people as well, but you must have at least as one of your references Dufour. You're simply talking about what does a good PLC look like? What does it consist of? According to the experts, this is what it is, and remember, you must follow APA. I will tell you, I've had a couple of 3 assignments turned in for my review already, and you've got to pay careful attention to the 7th edition of APA because capitalization has changed completely. It's even hard for me to get used to not capitalizing some words that I've always capitalized, but we will have to send it back and tell you you've got to follow the APA. So make sure you follow APA with you look at that and study that with with capitalization especially. And I'm going to conclude task number 1 with this. If I went in to observe your PLC, what should I expect to see? That's what you're talking about there. What do the experts say? What does it look like? What would I see if I went in there? Again, we're not asking you to write a dissertation or a thesis. We're just asking you to do good scholarly research. And I would say a page, 2 pages at the most, you would have that research taken care of right there. The next thing is your PLC selection. This is going to be, these are the people for the most part that's going to be working with you for the next year. Again, your administration may want to be a part of this, or they may tell you you're on your own. But what you're going to do, you're going to select the members who will serve on your PLC. A minimum of 3, probably no more than 5 people at the most. That you don't want so many people that you can't get anything done. But you want people that's going to help you and give you good advice, good feedback, doesn't mind. They're not going to gripe and complain every time they walk into a meeting or be great. You don't want people like that on your team. So you need to invite people on your team that you know that you can work well with, and people that's going to contribute to the process. And what you've got to do here, you're going to talk to us about, what is your process? How did you come up with the process for choosing your team? And then you're going to identify who they are. You're going to put teacher A, teacher B, teacher C, teacher D, however you want to do it. You're going to identify them. You're going to tell who they are based on if they're, it could be a 6th grade language arts teacher that has been teaching for 25 years, has their master's degree, and is also nationally board certified. Anything that's going to tell us, all the good qualities about that person, and what makes them a good, viable candidate to be on your team. What expertises do they bring to the table? What strengths do they have? You're going to talk about their credentials, and that's all you're doing in that area. And then you go to number 3. Your heading is the actual PLC meeting. This is where you meet with these people that you've selected in number 2. Now, it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out meeting, but what you're going to do in this meeting, you're going to say, okay, hey guys, thank you for agreeing to serve on my PLC team, and you're going to talk about the purpose. Why are you doing the PLC? What is your vision? What is your purpose? Then you're going to, together as a team, you're going to establish your PLC meeting norms that Dr. Revis has talked about. And there is that one of your, some of the information that we've provided you in those documents that we've provided you in Blackboard talks about the meeting norms as well. That all of that is in there according to the 4. What should they look like? So you need to evaluate. So all you're doing right here is talking about the meeting. How did the meeting go? What did you talk about? What did you do? And with that, you're going to have an artifact. That artifact is going to be, you don't ever have a meeting without a meeting agenda. Your agenda should outline what the meeting consists of, and then that becomes an artifact that you will include in your appendix section. And then you're going to have a reference section because you've done research up here. You've got literature review up here. So you're going to have a reference section, and you're going to do that APA style. That's all there is to task 1. Again, let's go back up very quickly. You're going to tell what your research, what does a PLC look like? You're going to pick your committee, and you're going to tell about the people in your committee. You're going to have a meeting with these people. You're going to write about your meeting, and then you're going to reference it, and then you're going to put an appendix at the end, appendices, and you're going to put any artifacts that you included in your meeting. Have somebody to take a picture of you presenting. That's proof. And that's all there is to task 1. And you will submit that. And in this also, in the appendices, put your email requests for the PLC to your principal and their affirmative response. Put that in your appendices too as artifacts for this first task. That is all there is to task 1. This is what we should see to us by Sunday night of this week by 9 o'clock for review. But when it comes to us, I promise you, if you will follow this step, most of it, we will be able to tell you excellent work, good work, very good work, move on to task 2. We should not have to send much or any of this work back if you'll follow this step by step. Dr. Revis, can you say anything differently that I haven't said about that?
No, sir. Just follow that template. Fill in the blanks with your work, and you're good.
Okay. Okay. How are the questions so far, Dr. Revis?
Well, I don't know if you know or not. I had to log off and shut down my computer and come back on because I lost all kind of. Couldn't even hear you.
Okay.
I'm back up. I don't know how the questions are, but we are going to talk about the peer review process here in just one moment.
Yes, we're going to talk about that too, but I want to go ahead and get those. There's students that will be ready to move on with task 2. So what I want to do is go ahead and introduce task 2, prompt 1. Now, you will notice that with just a reminder too, when you submit Dr. Revis and me your work, please be reminded, don't send us half of your work. Send us all of task 1 to review at one time. I know you want to say, well, I'm on the right track or what. We don't have time for that. So send it to us, and when you send it to us, let it be as complete as it possibly can be, and we'll give you good, solid feedback. Now, I will tell you this, in the review stage, if I send it back or Dr. Revis sends it back and it's not, if it's not quite ready and we say, you need to do thus and so, thus and so, and thus and so, and I might put an 80 on it. When you submit it back the next time for our review, then if you've done what we've asked you to do, then we will change that 80 to 100 if you've done what we've asked you to do. So you have an opportunity to turn whatever you do in the review stage, you have an opportunity to get 100 out of it if you will follow our directions and do what we ask you to do. Okay? And doesn't it make sense that if we tell you, if we give you 100 on it at the review stage, if you do what we tell you to do, when it's ready to submit for a final grade, you should get a what? You should get 100 on it if you've done what we've asked you to do, right? So it's easy to get hundreds out of us if you'll just follow the directions. Okay, let's look at task number 2. Okay, you formed, in task 1, you formed your committee. You've met with them. You've told them, hey guys, thank you for coming on board. This is what we're going to do. Now, task 2 is where you really get down to business. Now, you can go back and go back to your template and read the instructions and descriptions carefully, but what I want to do is break it down for you right now. Under prompt 1, you see all of these yellow 1, 2, 3, 4. You see four numbers, and you see all of it's in yellow. That means you're going to do what? You're going to write something. Okay. For number 1 under prompt 1, your heading's going to be data collection strategies. Now this is what you're doing. The candidate will work with that selected PLC team. You're going to work, and we call you the candidate, but you refer to yourself as I. You're going to work with that PLC team that you formed in task 1 to determine the strategies that will be used to collect the data to determine the most pressing need for improving student achievement. Okay, as a team, you're going to say, okay, this is what you're going to brainstorm. You're going to come up with all of the things that you think of that you can do to gather the data that you're going to need to be able to begin looking at the problems at your school and to be able to identify the most pressing needs. So you've got to have stuff to look at. So you're getting all of the puzzle pieces so that you can get them together and you can put them out on the table. The narrative work for this section will discuss those. You're going to just talk about. You're just going to talk about. This is what the team and I have done as it relates to gathering data, to move forward with identifying the most pressing need for my PLC. Again, I did disregard this because I missed this when I was making changes. You are not the candidate. you refer to yourself in first person. So you're not the candidate, but it's the PLC team and I. So with number one, you're going to meet with your team, and you're going to come up with as many strategies as possible for collecting the data that you're going to be needing. And I would tell you, things that you're going to need is going to be your school's most recent report card. You're going to need, if you're in South Carolina, you're going to need your advanced ed report. If you're in North Carolina, you're going to need your teacher working conditions survey. You're going to need benchmark data. Any testing that is done at your school, you need to have access to that, and all of that should be readily available to you. If you don't know where it is, you need to ask your administration or your testing coordinator, and they should be able to provide you with that information. But those are off the top of my head. Those are things. Dr. Revis, can you think of anything else that they would need to gather?
No, that they do need to gather that. Now, guys, even if your principal has pointed you in a direction to look at for your PLC, you still need to show the data behind that decision.
Right, and when you're meeting with the team, even though your principal may have said this is going to be the most pressing need, you've got to go through the process and understand why your principal is saying that that's the most pressing need. So you go through to the process, and if it comes out, and you can say in your narrative work that these are things that we discovered, but our principal has identified for us that this will be our most pressing need. You can say that because you've got to work, with what their wishes are for the school. The second heading is criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need. Now, once you and the team have determined the strategies for collecting data, you're going to decide, okay, what criteria and what process or processes will be used for identifying the most pressing need. Okay, you've got all this stuff up here. Now, what are you going to do with it? You've got to begin breaking it down. You've got to set criteria, you've got to set processes in place, and your narrative work there for this section is simply going to discuss the criteria that you and the team have selected and the processes you're going to use. Once you get with your team, you're going to find out how valuable their expertise and what they've got to say is going to help, because things that you can't think of, somebody else can think of. That's why it's a team approach. Then the third heading, collaborative data analysis. I want you to look at that first word, collaborative. That means that you don't do it by yourself. That means that you are working with the team. Analysis means you've already got the data because you've collected it all up here. You're going to work with the team. You're going to collaborate with that team, and you're going to analyze it. You're going to break it down. You're going to tear it apart. You're going to look at it from one end to the other. And then what you see will be one thing, but what somebody else sees could be, and you could say, oh, I didn't see that. And that becomes a part of the analysis. You're going to need all of that information to come to a decision. Okay. You should thoroughly disaggregate the data by looking at all groups, subgroups, etc. You look at it every angle that you possibly can. Make sure you cover every angle possible. And then the narrative work for this section will simply discuss the process. You just tell us what you and the team have done. And after you've done all that analysis, after you've done all of that, then the team is going to, it comes back to that word consensus, Dr. Revis. There will be consensus with the team that in number 4, after all of the work that we've done in 1, 2, and 3, our most pressing need is, and you could say the most pressing need is blank based on our principal's recommendation. Once step 3 has been completed, You and the team will determine the most pressing need based on the collaborative data analysis. The narrative work for this section will identify the most pressing need and why. Don't just say the most pressing need is. The most pressing need is, and tell us why it is the most pressing need. Now, task 2 has 2 prompts. Both must be completed. If you only do one, that means you've only completed 50% of the assignment. Prompt 2. Prompt 1 requires all narrative work, while prompt 2 requires graphic representation. Now, you've gathered all kind of stuff up in prompt 1. You've gathered all kind of stuff that you're looking at. What you're doing in task 2, you're basically telling the same story that you've told us in prompt 1, but you're doing it visually in task 2 or in prompt 2. You're telling about it in prompt 1. In prompt 2, you're showing us. When I look at it, I can see what you're talking about. You know, if you tell me that that our most pressing need is 6th grade literacy with Hispanic males, then when I look at prompt 2, I should be able to see graphic information that shows me valid test results where you have, you know, where you've got the proof that this subgroup needs help. So that's what you do with prompt number 2. You show us, and please remember that all graphics should include a narrative explanation of what is being presented. Once you've done prompt 1 and prompt 2, if there are references, if you've done any type of citations or whatever, if you've cited, you're going to have a reference section, and then your heading is appendices. And remember, at this point, at a minimum, you're always going to have an agenda and minutes of a meeting, because you are continuously working with your established PLC. Once task 2, prompts 1 and 2 are complete, you are to schedule a meeting with your principal or leadership team, and you are to present the findings. Now, be honest with them, and you know, if that's not what they want, once you give the findings, you just tell them the truth of what you and the team have found. You're not required to do a video, but it is highly recommended. That becomes a great artifact that you can use with your folio that Dr. Lamb will be talking about at a later date. So, you know, when you get an opportunity to have a video, I highly recommend that you use it, because they are great artifacts you can use throughout lots of things throughout the rest of this process. However, you should have a picture of you presenting at a minimum. You should also have a PowerPoint and an agenda for this presentation to your administration, and this will be included in the work you will submit for final grading. Dr. Revis, can you think of anything else? Can I say that any differently?
No, you said it very clearly, but if you will, let me just answer a few questions.
Okay.
And from Kim, I was talking about Hispanic students in prompt 1. Would I not have the graphic there? Whatever data that you guys are using to look at and that you're talking about in task 1 should just be in graphically presented in task 2. Again, you know, I should be able to look at your task prompt 2 work and be able to say, yeah, I see very clearly from these tables, graphs, charts, why you zeroed in on your Hispanic students, okay?
Dr. Revis, now they'll have, you know, when you're pulling all of the data together in prompt 1, you're going to have lots of stuff. You may not use all of that, so you're only going to show us what you use in prompt 2 that's justifying why you have identified the most pressing need. You're going to have lots of stuff in prompt 1 that you're going to put on the table. You're going to talk about it, but you may not show it because you don't end up using it.
Correct. And we've got another question about how we're submitting assignments. We will get to that if you'll just hold on to that. We're going to go over it later tonight.
Okay. In fact, I'm going to come out of this and hope that I don't lose everything, because I have. Let me see. There it is. Let me do this.
While you're doing that, Dr. Stedman, let me fill in a little bit. There just seems to be some confusion about when assignments are due. For week 2, what we're on right now, what is due on Sunday evening, not by 9 o'clock, is your APSL Task 1 draft due in Blackboard Discussion Board, okay? Then if you look down at week 3, there's several things that are due. Your final APSL revisions on February the 2nd, your APSL Task 1 peer reviews, and your draft APSL Task 2. So there are lots of things that are due by February the 2nd. When we see something's due in week 2, that's the Sunday evening, ending week 2 by 9 p.m.
Okay. Let me pull that back up, and I'll come out of that. Again, and I'm going to hide this the video right here so I can. Okay, there it is. Okay. Your assignments, again, remember, if it's in red, that means that it's dealing with the APSL, and that's what Dr. Rivas was talking about. This week 2, the APSL Task 1 draft is due in Blackboard's discussion board. It's for review only. Now, this is where you and your team, your Zoom team, will look for work, and you will begin commenting on each other's work, and I'll talk about that. But again, remember, I told you that you should always look at. Let me come out of this. I told you should always look at week 1, and you should always look at the next week as well, or whatever week you're in. You're in week 2 right now, so you should always look at week 3. And if you're in week 3, you should always look at week 4, because you're going to begin seeing how all of this this comes together, and how it begins flowing. After this week, you will always be submitting. Let me show that. You will be submitting. Here it is. Okay, this is next week. Okay, now this week, now I don't want you to get this confused. This week, we only need APSL Task 1 for review. We're going to tell you what you need to do to fix it, or we're going to tell you it's ready to submit for a final grade. APSL Task 1 in week 3. Revisions will be due to Dr. Revis and me, and we're going to give you a final grade on it. Okay, that's Task 1. APSL Task 1 peer reviews, there's 2 of them from your Zoom team, will be also due week 3. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And then APSL Task 2 that I just introduced, the draft for that, the same thing that you're doing this week for Task 1, the draft for that will be due the same time that you're turning in your final for Task 1. You'll get a grade on that. We'll review Task 2. And then when we get to week 4, you're going to see where Task 2 will be due for a final grade, and Task 3 will be due for a draft. It follows that process until we finish the APSL. Let me show them very quickly. Okay. Peer review. Here it is. Okay. Okay, remember, these are your Zoom teams, your peer review template. You will use this template. Once the people in your Zoom team, and there should be 4 or 5 people in your team, and you should have decided as a team, you know, so that everybody's not looking at the same work as much as possible. Which 2 people that you're going to be doing reviewing APSL Task 1, when you look at their work, these are the key questions. You're going to give good scholarly feedback on all of these areas based on what you see from APSL Task 1. You're going to save this document, and you're going to submit this document let me come out of here. I've got a lot of documents in here. Okay. You're going to put that in. Okay. Yes, Simon?
Yeah, peer review.
Okay. Okay.
Completed peer review Dropbox. I'm down.
Okay. I'm trying to find it. Okay.
Right there.
Here it is. The APSL completed peer review Dropbox. Okay. Okay, here it is. APSL Task 1 peer review. This is on the work that's being submitted this weekend. You will begin looking at the work that is submitted by this weekend. You will pick 2 of the people in your group to review their work. When you've done it, you will go to APSL Task 1 peer review. And this is where you write the submission or whatever you need to write there. You browse your computer, you attach it, and you submit it for grade. It'll go directly to Blackboard for Dr. Revis's students and to me for my students, and we will give you a grade on it. You can get up to 100 points on this. And I'll be honest with you. If you follow the rubric requirements and you do a good scholarly review, then it's easy to get 100 points out of this as well. We're not going to beat you up on stuff like this, but we want you to give good constructive feedback. You know, and again, when you get the feedback from your peers, it belongs to you. You can choose to make the changes based on their recommendations, if there's recommendations, or you can say, I like my work just like it is. I'm not going to do anything else with it. And that is okay if you choose not to do that. You don't have to do that. It's based, but now if Dr. Revis and I give you feedback on something and we say that you need to do so-and-so, I would ask you to take that as good advice and make those changes, because you know, we're going to be the ones that give you the final grade on it anyway. So make sure that you take our advice and that you follow our advice. Your peer advice, if it's good advice and you think that it will make a difference, because they could see something that you haven't seen. But we ask you to give this, you know, give it your best. This is the beginning of you learning how to evaluate teachers and to provide good constructive feedback in the classroom. Dr. Revis, anything you'd like to say on that?
Yes, just to answer a couple questions. There's nothing right now for you to peer review. The first thing you're going to turn in is your Absol Task 1 draft. And you'll turn that in through your discussion board by this Sunday, 9 p.m. If you get it, if you've done it with it early, hey, turn that sucker in. One of the things you could do this week is make contact with your Zoom team members and decide who's going to review which ones. I know in my class, I've had 3 people drop already, and I've had 3 people who have not shown any activity in Blackboard. So I may have to shift those teams around a little bit so we will have 2 team members to grade. But you can go ahead and start talking with your team members about who's going to review who. Okay, you've got.
And Dr. Revis, you may be able to make those changes probably by the end of this week.
Okay, all right.
That if you should be able to make adjustments, and then if any of them show back up, you can just put them in with the. In fact, I would tell you to go ahead and make the adjustments so they'll know. And then if any of these others come on board or show up, then you just place them wherever they need to be placed so that this doesn't hold the ones that we've got up.
Okay. I've already taken out the ones I know have dropped for sure. Inactive ones. Tina, you're correct. You will complete a peer review. You'll have to wait until after Sunday at 9 p.m. Until you can do that.
Okay, and this is the discussion board. And remember, Absol Task 1 for peer and instructor review. On this Sunday, or by this Sunday, this is where you will submit your work for our review, and then your peers can look at it as well. This is where you submit it. It's in 2 places. It's actually, you can go to the Absol Task for review, and then the same thing is down here, the discussion board. It's the very same thing. It's the same thing in 2 different ways. Okay. Dr. Revis, any other questions?
If you've not gone ahead and given team members your contact information, please do so. It's under Zoom Teams, the tab on the left under Zoom Teams. You need to give your team members, your contact information, your email information, so they can get with each other.
Under Zoom Teams right here, it says upload your contact information here for your team members. And that is, and again, it goes to Dr. Revis and me. You'll get 1 point for doing that, but that just lets us know that you've done it. Okay, other questions?
When you submit your Absol Task 1 for review, yes, you're correct, Andrea. Everybody can see it if they want to look at it, but only that. Probably nobody's going to go in there and do that unless they're a team member going to review your work. I don't think people will have time to really do that. Look at everybody's work.
Yeah. But and that's not a problem. We ask you to submit to us, the first time, as the best work that you possibly can submit to us the first time. And and we realize that there's going to be areas that probably will need correcting, but try to give it to us your very best the first time that you give it to us. Okay, other questions, Dr. Revis? Have you got anything else that? I'm not going to go into the other. They've got enough. I'm going to stop it with this, and we will continue with some things on Thursday night, but they will have time to have digested all of this, been working through this. You'll get your video later tonight from Dr. Revis and me, once I can get it uploaded and get it sent out, and then you can go back and review all of this. We will pick up on some things on Thursday night, but then Dr. Lamb is probably going to go in another direction as well as we begin talking about some of our competencies and some of our requirements for our internships, etc. Okay.
So your focus for this week, if you've not already met with your PLC, you've got to do that meeting this week. Hopefully over the weekend, maybe you have done your research for your PLC and you've done your narrative school profile and gotten some of those things out of the way. But you're going to have your first PLC meeting this week in order to be ready to upload your draft of task 1.
Right. And once you get past that, I think you'll begin seeing things start coming together better for you. But you've got to go ahead and get that initial meeting over with and make sure you've got the blessings of your principal as well. Before we close up tonight, I just need to remind you, many of you, your clinical coach 1, they have been reaching out to you via email, trying to make contact with you so that they can get their site visits scheduled, and some of them are having difficulty getting responses back. Please make sure you're checking your Gardner Webb email on a daily basis, and please respond back to these people so that, or us, because I'm one of them, so that we can make our visits and get them scheduled. Dr. Revis is as well, so we can get our visits completed and we can get everything cleared with your principals. Dr. Revis, can you see any other questions before?
Question, how often do we Zoom with our team? We will tell you that right now. Just get that peer review, focus on the peer review for not this week, but next week. And we'll talk to you about Zooming with your team members later.
Okay. Let's see. Anna, can you hear me? Anna, unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself, Anna? Okay.
Yes.
I visited with Anna today, so I just want, this is my litmus test. Anna, the things that I told you we would be doing tonight, have I followed through with that? Were you able to understand and follow the things that I've been talking about?
Yes.
Did it help? Okay, I told you.
Yes, it helped a whole lot.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that I had done what I told you that we were going to try to do.
You did.
Decledra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Were these questions answered for you tonight that I told you that we would be going over?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Precious, can you hear me? Precious, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Did we do what we said we were going to do?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I hope the others, those happen to be 3 people I visited today.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, guys, we will see you on Thursday night. Those of you that can, join in for the session on APA at 6 o'clock if you possibly can. And I think that will help tremendously if you have time to do that as well. Alan, did this help? Okay, good. Thanks.
In the meantime,
good night.
Call, email, whatever you need to do if you get it, okay?
Right, and you can get up with me as well. Kayla, that's a fine young man.
Dr. Stedman.
Yes.
It's Decledra.
Hey, Decledra.
Oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I finally heard back from the board today.
Okay, good. Well, call me after this meeting, okay?
Okay, I will.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Dr. Stedman, she's a girl.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, I love that red hair.
Thank you.
Okay, that's beautiful red hair. What's her name?
Adeline.
Ah, that's pretty. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.